Hi, John. Hey, Jaguars. So Be It by Sarah Weeks. This is chapter 10, which is called Go. I got to the bus station with plenty of time to spare. I had planned to use the time to do what Bernie and I had agreed on, scout around for a woman sitting near my departure gate who I could get on the bus with. Once I got there, though, for some reason that didn't feel right. There were plenty of women around, all shapes and colors and sizes, and a lot of them looked pretty friendly. But instead of picking one out, I found a seat on an empty bench and sat down. I sat there for almost 45 minutes with my suitcase clamped between my knees, waiting. I don't know how to explain it. It was just a feeling I had that the right person would come along and find me instead of the other way around. About 15 minutes before my bus was due to leave, a woman in a long green raincoat came and sat down beside me. She had a little soft-sided suitcase with netting on the ends, and inside were 5 kittens, all different colors and patterns. They were mewing up a storm, so she was clicking her tongue and whispering to keep them quiet. "They're scared as all, poor babies. It's the first time they've been away from their mama," she told me. Her name was Alice Walensky, and she was on her way to a big family reunion in Salt Lake City. She was bringing the kittens along to give them away to some of her cousins, since she already had 3 cats at home, including the mama cat, Baby. We started talking about cats, and I told her about Cookie Dough and Clara Barton, and before I knew it, they announced our bus, and we got on together. Just as easy as that. The first hour I was on the bus, Alice kept up a steady stream of chatter while I kept eyeing the box that Bernie had given me. I wanted to know what was inside. I didn't want to open it in front of Alice, though, in case it was something embarrassing. Finally, nature called, and she made her way to the rear of the bus to use the bathroom. I quickly untied the yarn and opened the box. Inside was the red sweater, the one I'd found wadded up in the back of the closet. Bernie had washed and blocked it and carefully mended all of the moth holes with matching red yarn. I'd had no idea she'd been working on it. She must have been doing it in her room at night after I'd gone to sleep. I slipped the sweater over my head and double-rolled the sleeves up. It was much too big for me, but I didn't care. It was perfect. Soft and warm and smelling wonderfully of home. Home. I didn't dare let myself think about it. I was afraid if I did, the hollow feeling that had taken hold in my stomach earlier would take over the rest of my insides and turn me wrong inside out. To keep my mind off things, I got out my notebook and started a new list. Things I have never seen before. Cows, seats with footrests, roadkill 1, dead deer, 2, dead raccoon, 3, dead skunk, and 4, mystery fur. Alice came back from the bathroom, and for a change she didn't seem to feel like talking. Instead, she put up her footrest and pushed her seat back as far as it would go so she could nap. I wasn't tired yet, so I sat there working on my list for a while longer, and I added 3 more things. Toll booths, someone changing a flat tire, hitchhikers. The kittens were asleep in their bag tucked under Alice's seat, but after a while one of them woke up and began to cry. I got down and crouched between the seats, peering through the net at its tiny face. "Don't worry," I whispered. "We'll be there soon." We made our first stop at about 7 o'clock that night in Fernley, Nevada. Alice didn't wake up, so I climbed over her and got off by myself, and called Bernie collect, according to the plan. She cried when she heard my voice. I thanked her over and over for the sweater, and quickly told her about the bus and about Alice and the kittens and everything else I could squeeze into our brief conversation. We'd agreed beforehand to set Bernie's egg timer each time I called to keep the calls down to 5 minutes. That way the bill wouldn't mount up too high. She told me what she and Mama had been doing. "Oh, we dusted today, Heidi. You know how your Mama loves dusting." Mama and Bernadette would always tickle each other with the feather dusters, so it was more of a game than a household chore, although I never noticed any dust around, so I guessed it accomplished more than just entertaining Mama. "How's her head?" I asked. "Well, she lay down for a couple of hours this afternoon after you left," she said, "and she's been fine since then. Are you okay? I've been so worried." Bernie had put the map up in the kitchen next to the phone, and she stuck in the first pushpin, a blue one, on Fernley. The timer dinged just as they announced my bus. "Call me from your next stop," Bernie said. "That'll be Lovelock." "It's going to be pretty late," I said. "I'll be up," she told me. Bernie had given me $50 before I left. It was all she could spare. I had the bills, which she had washed, of course, in my backpack. We knew that the cab to Hilltop would be $15 each way, so that meant I had only $20 extra to buy food or anything else I might need along the way. Bernie was afraid it wouldn't be enough, but I wasn't worried. If I needed money, I was sure I could find a way to get some. I was hungry, but I didn't want to waste money on the food in the bus station. So when I got back on the bus, I ate one of the ham sandwiches Bernie had packed, and afterward a package of Xander's chocolate devil dogs. The food stopped my stomach from growling, but I still had that uncomfortable hollow feeling deep down inside. Alice woke up from her nap, refreshed and feeling talkative again. She was more of a teller than an asker, but I didn't mind. Her chatter helped keep my mind off other things. She talked on and on into the night about the reunion in Salt Lake. One way or another, 52 Walensky's were making their way there. Her clan, she called them. Some, she explained, she got along with famously, and others she could have done without. When she started talking about the feud she was having her sister Ellen over who had given better Christmas presents the year before, I got sleepy. In fact, I fell so sound asleep I slept right through the stop in Lovelock. It was the first time in my life Bernie and I hadn't said good night to each other. I slept straight through till the next morning, and when I woke up my neck was stiff and the kittens were making a pitiful racket under the seat. Alice put her fingers to her lips, and then, making sure the driver didn't see, she took them out of the bag one by one, handing 2 of them to me to hide under my sweater, where they settled right down. "Do you have a big family, Heidi?" Alice asked me. I waited without answering. I'd learned that Alice had a way of asking questions that she didn't really mean for you to answer. Besides, I didn't feel like telling Alice about my family. Listening to her going on and on about the ins and outs of her own family had begun to make me feel even more acutely aware of all the things I didn't know about mine. Alice looked at me expectantly. Apparently this time she did want an answer. "Well, there's Mama and Bernie and me," I said, "and I've got a Grammy too." It felt strangely exciting to come right out and say I had a grandmother like that, even though I didn't know it yet for sure. Alice didn't question it, though. Why would she? 52 Walensky's were gathering in Salt Lake City. It probably seemed only fair for me to have one measly grandmother. "My grandma gave me this sweater as a going-away present," I added boldly. When I'd lied to Bernie about going to buy my ticket, I had felt guilty the whole time. This was different. Easy. And I didn't feel guilty. More like giddy. Alice didn't know me. I could tell her anything I wanted to about me or my family, and she wouldn't know if I was making it up or not. "My Grammy lives with us, and she gives me presents all the time," I said. "Hundreds of them." "Mine taught me how to make a pie," Alice said, turning the conversation away from me and back to herself. "The secret is in the lard. People turn their noses up at lard these days, but it's the only way to guarantee a flaky crust. Tell you what, Heidi," she said as she got up and carefully pulled a shopping bag down from the overhead baggage compartment. "I was going to bring this to the reunion, but Lord knows, with all the jouncing around, it'll probably be the worse for wear by the time I get there. How would you like to sample my strawberry rhubarb right here and now?" She pulled an aluminum pie tin out of the bag. "Who says pie's not for breakfast?" I was hungry, and I had never tasted homemade pie in my life. Bernadette wasn't a baker. Well, she wasn't a fryer or a boiler either. She made decent scrambled eggs, but other than that and coffee and jello, I don't remember her making anything much from scratch. We ate mostly frozen or canned things heated up. Alice's pie had little strips of dough woven like a basket across the top, and the edges were pinched up in perfect, even little waves all the way around. It was beautiful. "My grandmother was in the 4-H, she explained as she watched me lift a forkful of pie into my mouth. She won ribbons for her pies, and she passed on all her secrets to me because I'm her favorite grandchild." I didn't know the first thing about baking pies, but for reasons I couldn't understand, all of a sudden those secrets Alice's grandmother had passed on to her made me so jealous it hurt. "My Grammy makes pies too," I said. "She's the best baker in the world, but she just doesn't bake pies, just cakes, the kind with lots of layers, with frosting in between and pink roses on top. We're big cake eaters in my family, all of us." As I talked, I ate pie, bite after bite, unable to stop myself, just like the lying. Cake, 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 that's all anybody's ever thinks about at my house, I said through a mouthful of pie. Alice watched as I boll-weevilled my way through the whole pie. When I finally pressed my fork down on the last bit in the bottom of the tin pie plate, she smiled and said proudly, "Did you ever taste a flakier crust, Heidi?" I shook my head and licked the fork clean. I felt sick. The kittens under my sweater had grown restless, and their little claws were catching at the stitches in my sweater as they squirmed, so I took them out and put them back in the bag. Alice had a thermos of milk with her. She poured some in a little dish and put it in the bag for them. I was thirsty and wished she'd offered me some too, but she'd brought it for the kittens, so I kept quiet. "When's your birthday?" Alice asked me, once she had resettled in her seat. This time she didn't wait for an answer. "Mine's October 2nd, she said, and then ticking off on her fingers she continued. "My mother's is October 10th, my sister's is the 13th, my brother's is the 18th, and Daddy's is the 27th. We're all 5 of us October Walensky's." October Walensky's. I felt another jealous pang. I looked at Alice and wondered, would she understand if I told her about my birthday? Did she know anyone else who had to guess about when they were born? How could an October Walensky possibly understand about that? "Who named you, Alice?" I asked, and braced myself for another pang, because I was sure she would know. "It's a Walensky tradition," she began. "The name Alice has been in the family for generations. There are scads of us. My grandmother and my great-grandmother on my father's side were Alices, and there are 2 uncles who married Alices, and gosh, there must be at least 3 other Alices I can't even think of right now." The thought of all those Walenskys running around happily naming their babies after each other made me antsy, and again I felt driven to bend the truth like a soft twig. "I was named after the movie," I told her. "The one with Shirley Temple in it." "Really? Oh, I love Shirley Temple," Alice said, clasping her hands together with delight. "All those wonderful curls and that cute little pout. I'm a big fan." "My Grammy knows her," I went on, trying my best to make it sound like that was no big deal. "Just one of many interesting things about me." "She knows Shirley Temple? You mean personally?" Alice asked. My chest swelled with pride. I was discovering something else about lying. When people believe what you say, sometimes you forget you're not telling the truth. "Shirley Temple's the one who taught my Grammy how to bake cakes. She's a very good baker," I said. Alice looked at me for a minute. "The Shirley Temple we're talking about, the movie star? She taught your grandmother how to bake," she said. I nodded. "She comes over and bakes at our house all the time," I said. "Shirley Temple comes to your house," Alice said. "Yes, she likes to come. She likes our oven better than hers," I said. "I see," Alice said, nodding and pulling a loose thread on her sleeve. "You must have a very nice oven at your house." "Yep. Shirley Temple comes over all the time to use it, and after she and my Grammy bake cakes, they decorate them and stick candles in them, and then we all sit around together and pretend it's somebody's birthday." "And she comes over to do this pretty often, does she? Bake cake in your oven?" asked Alice. "Very often. All the time, really, except of course when she's busy in Hollywood making movies." "Of course," she said. "Tell me something, Heidi. When Shirley Temple comes over to bake with your Grammy, does she ever tap dance for you? Show you the steps she's working on for her next movie, maybe?" "Sometimes she says," I said. "Sometimes she dances." "In your kitchen?" asked Alice. "Or in the living room," I said. "And does she sing sometimes too?" Alice asked. "Sometimes, if she's in the mood." Alice laughed. Then she looked down at her lap and didn't say anything for a minute, and I knew something was wrong. "Heidi," she finally said, "like I told you, I'm a big Shirley Temple fan. I think I've seen every one of her movies at least a dozen times, which is why I happen to know she hasn't made a new one since A Kiss for Corliss back in the late 1940s. She's an old lady now, almost 80 years old, into politics, a staunch Republican. She doesn't tap dance in your kitchen any more than I do." And I'm going to have to stop there. We'll have to see part 2.